The night she called me from her business trip to say goodnight, I was already sitting in my car outside that hotel. I saw them walk in together. I said nothing. I just drove home and started planning. My name is Daniel Mercer. I'm 39 years old. I work remotely as a senior engineer for a manufacturing software company based out of Columbus, Ohio. Good salary, flexible schedule, no commute. My wife Sarah is 36. We'd been married for 11 years when everything came apart. We lived in a 4-bedroom house in Charlotte, North Carolina. Real neighborhood. Maple trees lining the street, neighbors who waved from their driveways. The kind of place you move to when you think you've figured out what your life is going to look like. Sarah worked as a project manager at a mid-sized consulting firm downtown. Smart job, solid income. She left by 8 most mornings. Came home whenever she felt like it. Some nights 6:30. Other nights 9, 9:15. Once past 10 with a half explanation I didn't fully catch because I was already half asleep on the couch. I want to be clear about something because I already know how it sounds. I wasn't sitting around while my wife carried us. I was pulling in $195,000 a year from my home office. I managed software implementation for enterprise clients across 4 time zones. Early calls, late calls, the kind of workload that doesn't fully clock out even when you close the laptop. And in between all of that, I was the one keeping the house running. Groceries, maintenance calls, the dog's vet appointments. We didn't have kids yet, but we had a life that needed managing, and I managed most of it without complaint because that was the arrangement we'd settled into and I thought we'd both agreed to it. What I didn't know was that Sarah had quietly stopped being interested in the arrangement at all. The business trip started about 14 months before everything fell apart. Sarah had been working toward a senior director position for 2 years. Travel made sense. Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, once a month at first. Then twice a month. I told myself it was the promotion pressure. I made dinners she wasn't home for, walked the dog alone, fell asleep on my side of the bed. I was the supportive husband. That was my role and I played it without question. The first sign I ignored was in February. I was filing our taxes and noticed her phone data usage had tripled over the previous 4 months. I told myself she was streaming shows in hotel rooms. The second sign was a Saturday in March. She came home from a supposed gym session and her bag was completely dry. No damp towel. No water bottle. I filed it away and told myself I was being paranoid. The third sign I could not rationalize away. It was a Tuesday evening in April. Sarah was in Cincinnati, or so she'd told me that morning over coffee. I was reorganizing the home office when I found a folder that had slipped down behind the filing cabinet. Inside were 3 printed hotel receipts, all from the same Marriott in downtown Chicago, all from her previous trips, all showing 2 guests checked in under her corporate account. I sat down on the floor. I want to be precise about what happened inside me in that moment because it matters. It wasn't rage. It wasn't tears. It was something much colder and much quieter than either of those things. It was the particular sensation of 11 years of small moments rearranging themselves into a completely different picture. The new perfume, she said, was a gift from a female colleague. The way she angled her phone screen away when she typed. The evenings she was too tired to talk when I called her hotel room but responded to texts within minutes. I put the receipts back exactly where I found them. I went downstairs, fed the dog, made myself dinner, and sat at the kitchen table for a long time. I did not confront her that night. I made a plan instead. The first thing I did was call my friend Marcus. We'd known each other since college. He happened to be a divorce attorney. I didn't give him the full picture on the phone. I just asked casually what documentation mattered most in a divorce case in our state. He gave me a list. I memorized it. The second thing I did was open a separate bank account at a different institution. Nothing sudden or suspicious. I simply began directing a portion of my own paycheck there, quietly, legally. I had been contributing about 60% of my income to our joint account for years. I brought it to 50. Sarah handled the household finances and never looked closely at deposit amounts. The third thing I did was wait for her next trip. She told me on a Sunday that she had to fly to Chicago that Thursday. Important client presentation. Might stay through Saturday. I told her I'd miss her. On Thursday evening, I drove to the Marriott downtown. I parked across the street with a coffee and sat in the dark. I wasn't sure what I expected to feel. Mostly I felt a deep, steady calm that surprised me. At 7:22 p.m., A black sedan pulled up. Sarah stepped out with her rolling suitcase, laughing at something on her phone. 20 seconds later, another car arrived. A man got out, mid-40s, dark coat. He walked straight to her and they embraced. Not a polite greeting, the kind of embrace that has months of history behind it. They walked into the hotel together. At 8:06 p.m. My phone rang. Sarah. Hey babe, just checked in. The flight was delayed almost an hour. I'm exhausted. That's rough, I said. Get some rest. I will. I miss you. I miss you too. I said. I drove home. Fed the dog. Slept better than I had in weeks because the uncertainty was finally gone. Uncertainty is the worst part. Once you know the truth, you can work with it. Over the next 3 weeks, I became two versions of myself at the same time. On the outside, nothing changed. I was the same Daniel. Present, warm, asking about her day, cooking on weekends, sitting beside her on the couch in the evenings like nothing had shifted on the inside. I was building a case. I hired a private investigator named Carol. Quiet, professional, early 50s, came highly recommended through Marcus. I gave her the dates of Sarah's next 2 scheduled trips. Carol handled the rest. Within 3 weeks I had photographs, time-stamped hotel check-in records pulled from Sarah's corporate card statements, and documentation of 27 phone calls between Sarah and the man in the dark coat. His name, I learned, was Greg Allison, senior vice president at one of her firm's primary client companies. Also married. Also with 2 children at home. That I brought everything to Marcus and asked him to prepare for filing. When he asked when I wanted to pull the trigger, I told him I'd let him know that I didn't have to wait long. 3 weeks later, Sarah came home on a Friday evening practically glowing. She'd gotten the promotion. Senior Director of Client Strategy. The announcement had gone company-wide that afternoon. She opened a bottle of wine and talked for 40 minutes about what it meant, what it would look like, who had championed her for the role. Greg Allison's name came up twice. There was a celebration dinner planned for the following Friday. Her team, her manager, several executives, key client contacts who had supported her promotion would be attending. Greg would be there. She invited me. I said I wouldn't miss it. I called Marcus the next morning. File on Friday, I told him. 4 o'clock. I want her served at the restaurant. He was quiet for a moment. You're sure? 4 o'clock, I said. Before the dinner ends. That week I moved what mattered out of the house. Not furniture. Nothing obvious. My grandfather's watch. External hard drives. Certain documents and photographs I didn't want to lose track of. I moved them to Marcus's office for safekeeping. I arranged for our dog to stay with my brother temporarily. I told my brother everything. He didn't say much. He just said, whatever you need. On Friday, I drove home at noon, showered, and put on the dark gray suit Sarah had picked out for me 2 Christmases ago. I looked at myself in the mirror for a moment. Then I drove to the restaurant and arrived 15 minutes before anyone else. The venue was exactly the kind of place that gets chosen for these occasions. High ceilings, low lighting, white linen. I introduced myself to the hostess, was shown to the table, and spent the next 15 minutes shaking hands and making easy conversation with Sarah's colleagues. I was good at this. People had always told me I was easy to be around. Sarah arrived at 7:04. She looked stunning. When she spotted me already seated and comfortable among her team, her face lit up. She crossed the room and kissed my cheek. You look amazing, she said. So do you, I said. Congratulations, Senior Director. Greg arrived at 7:18 with his wife, a quiet woman named Patricia who shook my hand and smiled politely. I was kind to her. None of what was coming was her fault. We were 14 people at a long table. I sat beside Sarah. Greg was 4 seats down. He glanced at me twice during the appetizers. Both times I met his eyes and smiled. Both times he looked away. 7:51 a.m., restaurant staff member approached Sarah quietly and said there was someone at the entrance asking for her by name. She excused herself with a curious smile. 2 minutes passed. Then I heard it. Not words. Just a sharp, involuntary intake of breath from near the entrance. The kind of sound a person makes when the floor disappears beneath them. She came back to the table holding a white envelope. Her face had completely changed. She sat down slowly and looked at me with a question she couldn't ask out loud in front of 13 people. I looked back at her and said nothing. Everything okay? Her manager asked. Fine, Sarah said quietly. Everything's fine. She held the envelope in her lap for the rest of the evening. I watched her hold herself together through the dessert course, through the final round of congratulations, through the toast that her manager gave about her dedication and her future at the firm. She was skilled at performing. I had learned that about her. When the dinner ended and people began collecting their coats, she took my arm and pulled me gently to the far end of the room. Daniel, she said. Her voice was controlled, but her eyes were not. What is this? Divorce papers, I said. Marcus filed at 4 o'clock this afternoon. She stared at me. How long have you known? She whispered. Long enough, I said. We can talk about this. We can fix this. Greg meant nothing to me. I need you to understand. His name being Greg, I said, tells me you told him mine. That's not nothing. I picked up my coat from the chair. Marcus will be your point of contact from here. The house paperwork is in the envelope. I've already started moving out. I paused. You should find a good attorney. A real one. Where are you going? She asked. Her voice had finally cracked. I looked at her for a moment. The woman I had built 11 years with. The woman who had called me from that hotel room to say she missed me while he was in the same bed. Forward, I said. I shook hands with 2 of her colleagues on the way out, thanked the hostess, and walked into the cool night air. That was 16 months ago. The divorce finalized in September. Sarah kept the house. Her income was higher and she wanted it more than I did. I took the savings split, the car, and the dog. I moved into an apartment 2 miles away that I have slowly made into something that actually feels like mine. 4 months after the divorce, I heard through a mutual friend that Sarah and Greg had quietly ended things. Apparently Patricia Allison had received her own envelope around the same time Sarah received hers. I don't know the details and I didn't ask for them. The anger I carried through that year is mostly gone now. What replaced it I didn't expect. Clarity. I sleep well. I work well. I built a woodworking setup in my garage that I spend Sunday mornings in with the dog at my feet. Last month a woman from my running group asked if I wanted to grab coffee. I said yes. We've gone 3 times now. I don't know what comes next. But for the first time in a long time, I'm genuinely interested in finding out if something in your gut has been telling you something is wrong. Trust it. You don't have to blow everything up immediately. Write things down. Stay calm. Document everything. Make a plan. You'll know when it's time.